real challenge up here is trying to balance the clicker, your notes, and the microphone. So I'm gonna do my best. I ran into a friend just a couple of days ago, Sunrise from Watershed Alliance, some of you might know her. And when she saw me, she goes, "Hey, I didn't know you were an inspirational speaker." And I almost spit my water out. I'm not an inspirational speaker. I didn't come here today to be an inspirational speaker, not at all. I came here today to share my story, to share my perspective, to share some of the things that I've learned and continue learning in my career and my path, and to offer what's hopefully a positive challenge. How people who have a story that might resonate with mine can use some of that for positive impact and positive change. See, we're already struggling. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, you can't read that at all. This is a Spider-Man quote. I've got a couple of slides. So I told Kevin, oh my goodness, I'm going to go over my time. He's already mad at me. I told Kevin that I'm not an artistic or creative person at all. When he said we were doing this Pichu-Kachu thing, I was like, oh, this is horrible. I can come up here and talk, but coming up with 20 slides that are representative and meaningful was the hardest part of this for sure. So at first, I went to AI. I went to one of those fancy new image creators, and I just put in my topic for each slide. And I thought, all right, we're going to be creative, we're going to be artistic. It's going to be wild and nuanced and meaningless, and it sure was. So after I got not accosted, but after I had a different perspective in talking with Sunrise, I had to go back in here. I had to change slides up significantly. A couple of them are going to be goofy. This is the first one. This is the quote from Uncle Ben in Spider-Man, that with great power comes great responsibility. But I changed it. I changed it for the purpose of this conversation because we are talking about privilege today. So what it says, or what it's supposed to say, is with great privilege comes great responsibility. Now, let's see if this is going to work. There we go. I am here really specifically because I won an award this year. I won the General Marshall Leadership Award from the Historic Trust. This is a group of everyone who was nominated this year. And this is who gets the applause, because this is not an individual effort. None of this is an individual effort. This is group, this is community, right? I was honored to be nominated. I was incredibly honored to be named a finalist. And frankly, I was surprised as hell when I won that award. But it certainly was a wonderful experience. It provided a wonderful lesson. There were some amazing things that I was able to learn through that process. And two of the things that I think relate to that award and what we're doing here today. Two of the things about General Marshall that are catalysts for our conversation today were his maverick approach to innovation. He was not concerned with status quo. He was not concerned with ruffling feathers. And also that through all of his work, through being that maverick, he wasn't doing it for personal gain, personal benefit. He was doing it for his country. And he was doing it for his colleagues. He was doing it to empower through support. And those were two of the things that really resonated with me about his leadership, and that I'll talk a little bit about today. But before we really dive into it, one of the things that I want to address is the risk of talking about change. I'm a pacer. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to be doing this the whole time, back and forth. The risk of talking about change. It's really easy to talk about change. It's easy to pat ourselves on the back. It's easy to collaborate. It's easy to get together with like-minded individuals. But that's a risk. That's a risk to actually affecting change, right? Change is not always done through talk or collaboration. And so I wanted to bring that up. And what I'll be talking about mostly today is not what I hope to see for our community, because we could talk about that for days, even if we all agreed on that, which we don't. We could still talk about it for days. So instead, I'm going to be talking about how I hope we might be able to affect change in our community. So I am very proud of all the things that I do. I'm proud of my commitments to the community. I'm proud of my service to our community. I'm proud of the jobs that I have. I'm proud of the committees that I'm on. I'm proud of being a father. I'm proud that I coached my son's football team, although I'll never do it again. But all of these things, all of these wonderful things that I'm so proud of, I wouldn't have gotten here today, I wouldn't have gotten to them, I wouldn't have won the award if it wasn't also for a significant amount of privilege. A significant amount of privilege that helped me get here. My privilege, other than being a straight white man, middle class man, is that as a young child, I was handed a sense of belonging. I was handed a sense of self-confidence. As a young child, I was brought to events, to community events, to volunteer events. I was encouraged to communicate with adults. I was encouraged to feel like I belonged there and that my voice was needed, was validated, was justified. And that led to so many opportunities. It led to friendships, of course. It led to mentorships. It led to these positive role models and relationships with people outside of my family. These things led to me being, first, a Senate page up on the screen there in middle school. Then it led to me serving on Washington State's first, I have to remember this whole term, Legislative Youth Advisory Council, which was absolutely comic, I have to be honest. It was very, very silly. But these things instilled this idea that, yeah, I belong here, I can do this. Even as a teenager, a young teenager, I can do all of these things. And that led to something that was a little bit more interesting to me personally. It led to volunteering at the Oregon Zoo. I was there for 4 years in high school. This experience was a privilege. My family could transport me to and from the school regularly for 4 years. That was a privilege. And that privilege turned into the first serious job of my career. When I turned 18, I was hired as a conservation educator at the zoo. That's one of my favorite pictures. It's me pretending to be a dinosaur or a lion or something with all the kids. While I worked at the zoo and volunteered at the zoo, I had it in my mind that I wanted to be a zookeeper. That was the career path for me. Nowadays, I work primarily with teenagers, so it didn't change much. But I learned at the zoo that that was not the path that I wanted to follow. See, I worked with, at that point, as an 18-year-old, I worked with dozens, almost 100 over the course of my time there, of individuals who had really similar goals and aspirations, who wanted to get into conservation, who wanted to work in zoological facilities and institutions. And they were older than me. Almost all of them were in college. Some of them had graduated with their bachelor's. 3 of them even had their master's degree. And they were doing the same job I was doing, for the same amount of pay. And they could not find that next step. It wasn't available. So I decided pretty quickly upon seeing this, that that was not my path. That was not the direction that I wanted to continue down. I decided to, as a rebellious teenager, prove that I could be successful without going to college. Prove that I could be successful in my pursuits, and that it didn't require that education. So, fast forward 10 years. I had some amazing jobs, no doubt about it. I had some wonderful things that helped me get to where I am today. But I got to a point where I decided that I wanted to work in nonprofit. I wanted to work in an environment where I could help people, where what I was doing was no longer benefiting someone who had a mansion in Ohio with 3 elevators and helping him buy a 4th elevator for his house. I hated that. So I wanted to get into a role where the product of my work was actually helping people and helping my community. And this goes back to that privilege. Because here I am with no social service experience, no workforce development experience, no college education, walking into a job fair at Partners in Careers, thinking, no, I belong here. I can do this. And luckily, Sharon took that opportunity on me. She gave me that chance. And I do think I'm good at what I do. I'm proud of that. I do think I'm a hard worker. But getting that opportunity, getting that chance, opened the door for everything that came afterwards. It opened the door for participating in leadership in Clark County. It opened the door for the Marshall Leadership Award. And it opened the door for being here today. So we have to be honest. We have to be objective. We have to be realistic about that privilege. because that isn't given to everyone. That isn't fair. So when Kevin asked me to come and speak today, and one of the prompts was, what is it that you hope for the community? All I could think of is one of my favorite quotes from JFK, and it's that all of us do not have equal talent, but all of us should be given an equal opportunity to develop those talents. And I think that's paramount. I think that's behind everything that we hope to achieve, or at least that I hope to achieve, when I think about my career and how I can benefit my community. One of the discomforts in talking about privilege is that some people think privilege is an asset. They think that it's something that can be hoarded, hidden away, preserved. But that does not multiply privilege any more than sharing your privilege takes away from it. Privilege is a tool. Privilege is a tool that can be used for a significant amount of good if it's used appropriately. And that's what I've come to base my career around, is how I can use that privilege that I was given as a child to help open doors for others. All right, these are some of my favorite pictures from some of my work over the years with Partners in Careers. A lot of these are taking teenagers to businesses, it's taking them throughout our community, showing them different opportunities for them, both in high school and after high school, connecting them with individuals who can become mentors. I've been so lucky through this experience at Partners in Careers to be able to give back. That's huge. To be able to use those connections, my resources, my network, to open those doors for these teenagers. I hope that, at least in some extent, this work will help provide them with some of the privilege that I had when I was a teenager and a child myself. But as we talk about social services, as we talk about sharing privilege, as we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's so important to remember that this is not about saving anyone. If you go into it to save people, you're going into it for the wrong reasons. That's why I like JFK's quote so much. It isn't about the outcome, it's about the opportunity. Social services is sometimes not quite as gratifying industry as folks like to think. This picture here is from one of our favorite programs, one of my favorite programs, Roots to Road. But it's also symbolic, that's why I used it. When you plant seeds, when you're working with kids, and you're trying to affect change, it's very rare that you see those seeds sprout. It's very rare that you see the outcome of that work. Exponential impact of some of these changes can take years to be seen, long after the point that you're done working with them. And that's one of the topics that I wanted to hit on today. That diversity, equity, inclusion, that sharing privilege, that creating equal opportunity does not need to be altruistically motivated. It's practical. There are practical, tangible outcomes. So these are pictures from one of my other jobs. It's called Soul River. Has anybody ever heard of Soul River? Cool. I feel like the people I know and have already talked to about this raise their hands. Soul River is a small nonprofit. It's over in Portland. It is a group of American veterans, U.S. veterans, and usually BIPOC, always inner city youth. And what Soul River does is it takes these individuals on wilderness excursions all over North America. From the Arctic Circle up in Alaska to the Keys and the Everglades in Florida, Bears Ears, Monument Valley, down in the Southwest. And we focus on developing empathy and appreciation and respect and confidence and comfort for these places, these people, and the individuals that we're serving as they interact with them. Soul River is a great example of how sharing privilege, sharing resources, building inclusiveness is not just a feel-good activity. It's a practical activity. So this is me and my family. and this is where it gets a little selfish now, right? This is where we connect it to those practical outcomes. I love camping, I love hiking, I love fishing, but I'm not very good at it. I love exploring the wilderness, and I love sharing that with my family. American conservationism, Teddy Roosevelt, is based on white, middle-class, outdoor recreationists. That is how it was founded, and that is how it has been supported for almost 200 years. And it worked, but it won't work for much longer. If I want these places, these wilderness places, the wildlife that I so enjoy going and being around, to continue to be there for my son, for his children, for his grandchildren, it means that people like me have to make a much more concerted effort to include others who have been historically underrepresented in these places, in these activities. So again, sharing this privilege, sharing these resources, sharing these connections, building this inclusivity is not just altruistic, it's not just to feel good. There are practical, tangible benefits to this. In my line of work, I see inequities most frequently in the gatekeeping of opportunities. Sometimes this gatekeeping is intentional. We make certain opportunities merit-based. In order to do this, you have to do this first, or you have to be this. That's intentional gatekeeping. Sometimes it's unintentional. Sometimes it's things like barriers to transportation, other socioeconomic barriers. And sometimes, at its worst, it's just absolute comfortable negligence. People who are in positions to do good, instead, just passing the buck, because that's how it's been done. That's how they were told. In the past year, I have seen a state agency employ and defend statistically validated worst practices harming our most at-risk youth. I have seen a family of 30-year Clark County residents, 5 out of 6 are U.S. citizens, separated because of a mistake in wording that occurred 30 years ago. It's going on 3 years and counting. I've seen students be prevented from having opportunities for more appropriate education, hands-on learning, technical skill learning, because they didn't meet certain engagement and expectation requirements. It's easy to get up here and to say it's on us. It's easy to get together as a group and say this is on us to address. But sometimes it's only on you. Sometimes it needs one person to step up and try, take that responsibility, try to address, try to resolve, try to prevent. It is challenging to say as a group that we can do this collectively when no one has skin in the game, when none of us have skin in the game. A great quote that I found while putting this together. It says, what I'm hoping to impress upon folks is that this work, the work of being an accomplice, might cost you something. Real advocacy and comfort rarely go hand in hand. It's easy to be an ally or an advocate when it's a popular change, when people agree that the change needs to be made. It's easy to be a change maker when everyone wants to be included on making that change. But it's much harder to do so when people disagree on that change, when it's not the popular route to go, when it's not the popular decision to make. Are we willing to put ourselves at risk, our social status at risk, our job at risk? Are we willing to put our own skin in the game? And so the last thing that I'll say about privilege is that it's also a shield. Now, it doesn't take all the risk of action and advocacy out. There's still some, no doubt. But it's much less risky. The costs of advocacy and action are much lower for those who come from a point of privilege. We have the ability to get away with much more. So what I'll leave us with is General Marshall provided a great example of how you can approach change in ways that are not always collaborative, but are empowering, of how we can create more inclusive communities, and how if we really want to be change makers, if we really want to be innovators, if we really want to be tangible advocates, we can't be afraid to rock the boat, and we can't be afraid if the boat gets a little bit of water in it when we do so. Thank you.